Hey everybody, my name's Paul Esdin Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and we're jumping on here for a Friday episode. This was unplanned, and sometimes those are the best kinds of episodes we have. And I'm joined by a very special guest here on the show. You guys should know him. If you don't, well, now's a perfect opportunity to get familiar. And that man is Will Pa, as the nickname goes. So make sure you hit him up on Twitter. It is WillPa11, WILPA11, and he is the host of the TOJ Pod. Will, what's happening, man?
Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a long time coming. Excited to hop on. Excited to hop on with you.
And that's it. I mean, we've been talking about a potential collaboration, maybe something over here, maybe something over here. So I'm glad that we're able to finally connect the dots here. And before we get into all the great stuff with Jetsy OTAs, which kind of spurred a lot of this for today's show, of course, we got to talk about your big interview. And you are a guy that, you know, I don't know if you're much of a wrestling fan, but the wrestler I think of when I think of Will Pa is Randy Orton. You're like a legend killer. You're like a guest killer. I'm seeing all these guests. You had Sam Monson, who's phenomenal. We've had him on the radio show. He's great. And then Kyle Brandt was another big one that happened a couple weeks ago. You are a legend killer with guests, man.
I'm trying my best, man. I gotta get the content out as best as I can. Just try to provide as much guests and people talking about the Jets as we can kind of get, and just trying to build relationships with people. And lucky enough, I've been able to do so. And yeah, it's awesome to talk to some of these guys, and everybody's been super helpful for the most part. And I have nothing bad to say. I'm excited, man. It's been a good first 6-7 months, and hopefully it'll only continue and go up from here.
All right, let's talk about the latest interview first. So Sam Monson, and I'm sure that you don't really need a reason to bring Sam Monson on the show. He's just great, but we all know the main precipice, the main genesis of that one, and that was Sam Monson released his safety rankings, which made all Jet fans do a little jig. And in case you guys missed it, he released his full 32, but he released the top 10 on Twitter. And we saw Marcus Maye number 7, which, again, just on itself is phenomenal praise for Marcus Maye. And then you look a little further down the list. Oh, wait, that former Jets guy, Jamal Adams, is that how you pronounce it? So what did Sam say? I don't want to scoop it completely. We'll also give a shout-out in the YouTube description down below for the interview. But so what was Sam's thinking there with that ranking?
Yeah, so basically there's two parts to it. One, it was basically – Jamal Adams and Marcus Maye have played different positions. So obviously with the Jets, Jamal Adams kind of that rover position where he's dropping in a deep third, he's coming up and run, he's blitzing the passer, all those different things. And while he had a good year last year, from a great year, I mean historically from a sack perspective, in coverage, not his best year, to put it lightly. And it was about not just the matchups that he may struggle in normally with the Julian Edelman or Cooper Kupp or guys like that are quick, shifty guys. He also struggled covering tight ends. He got lost in coverage multiple times. He felt like Marcus Maye, always that deep third player with the Jets when Jamal Adams was here. And then this year got to do a little bit of Jamal Adams' role and excelled. That Buffalo game comes to mind week 1. He had multiple forced fumbles, a sack. Looked really, really good. And then when he was playing his free safety role was also excelled. So his reasoning was Marcus Maye can do both, and has proven that he can do both, and has done it over a period of time, and going forward should continue to only improve. And that Jamal Adams, while has had some really good success in the past, and he's still a top 10 guy, Marcus Maye just does both, and especially that coverage part significantly better for him. And that metric really stood out. He was like, that's why he's above where he is.
So as you said, again, Jamal's still a top 10 guy, just Marcus Maye is higher.
I think it's a compliment to both. It's unfortunate because you look at the Jets situation, and they did have 2 top 10 safeties 12 months ago. Now, do I prefer that we oblige Vera Tucker an additional first-round pick? Of course, but it's a compliment to Jamal. He had a bad year, and he's still ranked as a top 10 guy. Even bigger compliment to Marcus Maye that he was drafted after Jamal. He's still here. He's been loyal to this team, and I like to see him get extended because, the last extension was Mo Wilkerson, and while that didn't go great, that was not the Jets' fault. In reality, there was a lot of other things off the field that enhanced that going out.
Yeah, so as you said there at the end, it's a nice compliment to Jamal. You're still in the top 10, but not quite as high as old Marcus Maye there. Again, we're speaking of Will Pa here on the program. And I also want to get into this because another reason that I'm so fascinated, something I like to do, I've interviewed all kinds of people before, former players, analysts. Charles Davis is one of my favorites, but I love interviewing people who also interview people. That to me is incredibly fascinating. So I have to ask the question, I'm sure you've been asked this before. What's the best interview you've done so far? It doesn't have to be the biggest name, but there was just an electricity immediately when you talk with a guy and it just went further than you could have ever possibly imagined.
I mean, the easy answer for me is Kyle Brandt. I know Kyle pretty well. We have a relationship outside of football, and I worked out with him. But that podcast to me was one that really popped for me, just because left it all on the table, and super open to ask me anything. We'll talk through whatever. And brought a lot of juice. Steve Weish is the guy that comes to mind. Very very friendly, very willing to help, and however you want him to. And is plugged in. It's me might not be chef there and Ian Rappaport, but you stand close, and deserve a lot of praise there. Other people, Janae Coakley, who's a Jets person that, if you're familiar with the team, Janae, she's just been super helpful for me early in my career, and was a great interview. And then lastly, I'm biased, and obviously with the TOJ and Connor Rogers and stuff like that. Connor's awesome. He'll answer whatever, go into detail. He's well versed in everything Jets, but has a broader NFL perspective as well. That it's nice to hear, and he's doing a great job. Bleacher Report with the draft. Daniel Jeremiah gave him a great shout out. I think you tweeted that clip over this morning, and that was really awesome. I thought Connor about it. He was pumped, and I had nothing but great things to say about all those guys, and pretty much every guy that's been on. But those couple stand out for sure.
Yeah, let's take a quick detour on that. And I did. I'm going to be honest. The great news is, you're working in the TOJ family. I've done some work with TOJ. My podcast, The Jet Zone, is part of TOJ Digital. And Connor Rogers and Joe, I've been working behind the scenes with them on some of the Badlands stuff. And one of the things that just made me geek, because I got the episode early as I was writing that piece that came out Friday morning. So I got to hear the episode before a lot of people. And when I heard Daniel Jeremiah at the end of the interview just say, "Hey, Connor, let me tell you something," I'm like, whoa, wait a second. And again, for folks who missed it, go to Badlands. It's worth the subscription just for that. If you're a Connor Rogers, Joe Caparosa fan, or anybody, Badlands, there's 2 tiers, $3, $5. Get the $5 tier. The audio docuseries dropped earlier today, the first episode, and they had Daniel Jeremiah, who has obvious connections to Joe Douglas, and that's fascinating. But at the end of the interview, as they're just saying, "Goodbye, see you later," Daniel could have said, "See you later. I got other important crap to do," but he went out of his way to say, "Connor, this is what I got to tell you. I've noticed you. I've seen you at Bleacher Report," and then he just got deep and said the things that attract him or draw him in about Connor Rogers. To me, that I geeked out as a draft fan. I'm like, whoa! It was it just happened to my brother. I was like, wow, that's Daniel Jeremiah. So
I was so pumped for Connor. It's well deserved. Like I said, there's a lot of great people in this industry, and it's nice getting to know a lot of people off camera and kind of build a relationship. But there's a lot of people that they go out of their way to help you out, and Connor's been a guy that's gone out of his way to help me out. And it was really cool to see somebody that's so well respected. One of Joe Douglas' closest friends go out of his way to compliment Connor. It's pretty cool for all of Jets Twitter, Jets fans, that a guy that's kind of made his way to Jets, and draft stuff is now getting shout out, complimented, unprompted by someone like Daniel Jeremiah, who's, like I said, a close friend of Joe Douglas. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I said, I hope that is a rallying point for Jet fans to be like, "Hey, that's our guy." And as he inevitably progresses, again, he's the lead draft analyst right now for Bleacher Report, which is super cool on top of all the Jet stuff he's doing. But I mean, again, he's gonna be a superstar. I think we all knew that a long time ago, and he's just taking the proper ascension as he should be. Now let's go to the other side. And hey, you know what? I know this isn't gonna be the answer, or you want to give this answer, but come on, it's saucy, it's interesting. What about the worst interviews? Because I'm going to be honest, for my job, for those who don't know, I'm a sports talk radio host. I've interviewed some of the biggest names in all of sports. That's a weird flex, but also just because
you know what? Definitely flex, dude. You're crushing it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, but the real thing is I get a guy and the name value is wow. And I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's going to be a superstar. I get him on air and he sucks. I'm like, his answers suck. His interest sucks. I'm just like, wow, that was totally underwhelming. Will Pa. Who was that guy for you? Come on, throw him under the bus.
I'm not gonna give
over.
you a specific answer, but I will tell you there are certain people that the way that the positives that people that I mentioned before, and there's other people too. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but that made it like time. You can ask them whatever. They were super open. They brought their energy. There's been a couple people that kind of used it as like 30 minutes. The 30 minutes was up. They literally clicked off the Zoom and didn't really hear from them much after that. That type of stuff. It's unfortunate when it happens, and sometimes people will give you all their time and energy, and other people it's kind of just a checklist on their day, which is fair, and I understand that. But I will say that it's far outweighed. There's been very few that have been that way, and I've been lucky enough to have that happen. But there's definitely sometimes it's pulling teeth with some people if they don't really want to be there. But the majority of people, I will say, and I'm sure you can attest to this, when they come on, it's exciting for it's always nice when people want to talk to you and hear your opinion. I think that's always a huge compliment to somebody that you're reaching out to them to work on their stuff. So no, I'll politically Adam Gase decline to give a name, but I will say that's kind of the scenario that's happened a few times.
That's funny. This is what I was just about to say. Very politically correct of you, and to get future interviews, if you start throwing people left and right under the bus, maybe you'll get less interviews. So smart play, Wilpa. I couldn't get you on that little pothole in the road. I respect it. You're a seasoned veteran. Let's get into some of this Jets OTA business, because there's a lot of stuff that came from today here on Friday, June 4th. From the presser. First off, Mekhi Becton, and this is something we've been talking about for a while. At first, I'll tell you, so I'm doing my radio show live 10 to 12. So a lot of the media stuff is happening in the middle of my radio show. So I'm just seeing quotes. So it's hard for me to really dive in to fully understand what's happening. But I see Rich Cimini tweet out about Mekhi Becton about first off, there's an injury. It was something Rich had speculated about a couple weeks ago. It's confirmed by Robert Saleh in his presser. And then I see just a quote from Rich Cimini saying, clearly, and I'm paraphrasing here, I want to make that clear. Man, Mekhi Becton clearly is a fatty, and that weight all over his foot. Clearly, that's what Robert Saleh just said. And I had since heard the quote, and now I saw it. But at first, I'm like, man, where's Rich going here? But it seems like, from what Robert Saleh kind of said subtly, is that, man, Mekhi Becton has to make sure he's in the best shape possible. And he's the straw that stirs the drink. If he is out in any way, and obviously he is right now, he should be ready by training camp from what we understand. But, if he's out, then Zach Wilson's going to get mugged in that backfield. So I guess the weight things kind of persist here for Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, it's been my only concern, true concern with Becton since he was drafted. I made this comparison today on Jake Adams' show that Mekhi Becton and Zion and Aaron Judge all have this thing where they're such gigantic, unnormal-sized human beings, and they're so athletic and they're so big and they're so strong that it's almost an enemy for them. Where most people, this guy's going to come in the league, like Zach Wilson needs to put on a little weight, or maybe a guy needs to lose 5 or 10 pounds, but something that happened with Chris Jenkins is the more wear and tear on your body. Mekhi's super young, and this isn't going to happen yet, but every offseason you need to prepare so much harder to get in that great shape. And, naturally people are going to get banged up. It's football. Even the most durable guys, look, Sam Darnold was supposed to never get hurt and got hurt every year, right? So it can happen, but there needs to be a huge emphasis from the Jets staff, the Jets training staff, from Mayweather, from everyone around Kai, that you need to be at whatever weight they decide. It's 365 or 370 or whatever he's at now, which I bet you is probably in the 385 range if I had to guess. He's got time before camp. He should be put on ice, and that's all great stuff. Maybe it's a diet thing where he's eating too much red meat, or he's eating, too much of these couple of things, and it's prohibiting him. And also that flexibility in your calves. I'm getting a little technical here, but that's sometimes then all of a sudden it could lead to some Achilles soreness, then it's leading to your foot, and all that all works together. So whether it's dieting, whether it's the way he's training, however it is, the Jets need to work hand in hand with him, get him to be all bought in, which I'm sure Maye is. He seems like he wants to win. He wants to be on the field. I don't think it's a laziness thing. I think he's just a 21-year-old dude that's 385 pounds and 6'8", So my concern level is like a 3.5, 4 out of 10. It would be my concern with Corey Davis is a 0, because that injury is very much probably just the soreness getting back in the field. Mekhi, there's a little bit reason to be concerned, but not to overreact, in my opinion. I think if this continues to linger and he comes into camp week 1 and is still having these issues, then I'm going to start to worry a bit, just because now it's like a full real off season and you've had the same injury twice. Like what's the disconnect here between you, the Jets, and kind of your workout partners as a whole?
And by the way, Robert Saleh did confirm, speaking kind of on the same tangent, that he confirmed that Morgan Moses, veteran offensive tackle, did visit last week from the Washington football team. And speaking from, potential questions of, oh boy, hope he's ready, to a guy that's been ready for 6 straight years of 96 for 96 on starts, that kind of reliability. That also, knowing now the Becton injury, kind of opens the door and says, hey, maybe there is more than just the George Fant right tackle thing, some insurance policy, because both Moses in the NFL has exclusively played tackle, but he has a little experience at left tackle as well. Maybe that factors into what Robert Saleh said. We're not going to not bring really good football players into this building.
Yeah, no, I think the Jets can upgrade pretty much at every position on the offensive line still. I think they've done a good job the last 2 years of slowly building it up, high-end talent, and then trying to take shots on guys. Moses would be great. I mean, he's not Joe Thomas and he's not Mekhi Becton, but they're not going to ask him to be that. You don't need to have an offensive line with 5 All-Pros. It's just not realistic today's NFL from a pay perspective. But if he comes in and look, maybe he beats out George Fant out of that right tackle position, or maybe they kick somebody else over to guard, or maybe they have a swing tackle with Fant that could play both sides, or he beats out Chuma and somebody's like, you need to have depth on this offensive line. We've seen it over the last couple of years specifically, and whether from Moses' perspective, I think for Moses, he's a stable right tackle, can play left tackle. The Jets need to play their 5 best offensive linemen no matter what, and having some depth at that position would be nice, something they have not had in a long time. Having a guy that, like I said, best 5 need to play this offseason, and best 5 need to play this year. I don't know how it's going to line up. I'd like to see someone take that right guard spot by, the scruff of the neck, one of those 3 or 4 guys the Jets have at that position, Lewis and Rod, Cam Clark potentially. And then right tackle, George Fant had a decent year. It's probably more likely he regresses than increases again, and he's got very little guaranteed money left. If Morgan Moses comes in and beats him out, great. That's great for the Jets. They need to have more guys beat people out of positions, specifically offensive line, corner, tight end, things like that, than the opposite where it's like, oh, well, this guy's going to play because 4 guys are hurt and the other 3 got cut. No, I want to see the 5 best guys go and grab those spots and go from there. Moses would be a good upgrade. There's no downside in signing him, in my opinion, unless he's some horrible locker room guy, which I know he's not.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that's interesting. So Connor Rogers did bring this up, that what would simply the Jets just kicking the tires on Moses, a guy who's exclusively played tackle. When you have Mekhi and you have George Fant, it's like, wait a second, what's happening here? Connor doesn't believe that Fant will be able to translate inside. Guard is not something George Fant has played at the NFL level, so he could potentially be a swing tackle. All I got to say is that I'm fine if that's the case, but he'd be the most expensive swing tackle in the league based on his contract, which, again, I'm all for depth. And if you have George Fant as a backup, that's good. That means everyone's a peg down. You have more depth across the board. But that's the one thing where I go, hopefully he can play guard because, again, as Joe Douglas said in the middle of the draft, he wants to play the best starting 5. If the best starting 5 just happens to be Fant playing a brand new position at guard, maybe that's better than Van Rotten or Lewis or some of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, I think about when that stuff, too, is the thing with Crowder, too. I'm sure we're going to get to that. But restructuring some of these guys and that have no guaranteed money in the future, maybe it's extending them to bring down their cap charge, where now Fant's maybe a $6 million player this year, but it's fully guaranteed, or things of that nature. I'm not sure if there's been talk of that, but I'm curious to see what Moses would get. My opinion's probably a 1 for 5, 1 for 5.5 seems about right. But then it's like you're paying $14 million to have the combination of Moses and Fant, which, I mean, maybe. But also, the Jets aren't in a spot where the money is important. But at the same time, there's a lot of holes still on this roster. And if veterans come on the market, or you want to make a trade, you want to leave yourself open. Like I said, there's no downside to it. I'm just curious to see kind of how it all shakes out, if that does that if that is the case, and if Moses even wants to sign here, because what if there's a spot maybe in Chicago where he can go and start right away?
No, that's a good point too, and that's where we're going to wrap. We're going to go to the Jamison Crowder thing, and things got, as Paulie D says in Jersey Shore, awkward, because on Friday, Jamison Crowder hasn't been there the whole time, which has just left us to speculate. Oh man, I wonder why he's not there. That's strange. And then Robert Saleh in the presser goes, "Yeah, it's a contract thing." And then everyone goes, "Wait, a contract thing? What do you mean?" That's a Joe Douglas question. So as soon as he let that cat out of the bag, all of us are like, what's the discussion here? Because I think we've all had these moments in our lives where we're having a discussion and it's one-sided. The Jets owe no more guaranteed money to Jamison. So, Jamison, you're set to make $10 million this year. He's like, yeah, I am. They're like, ooh, it's a little high. And Jamison's like, what do you mean? Yeah, we'd like you to take less, Jamison. So it's awkward because, like, the Jets can threaten, well, we could just cut you. We've got Elijah Moore. We got Corey Davis. We got Denzel Mims. We got Keelan Cole. So either take a cut or else. And that's part of this article that's going to drop here in a little bit for Heavy.com is that, like, it's cut him or else. I mean, in a perfect world, as Robert Saleh kind of indicated in the presser, he'd love to have him. Who wouldn't? But he doesn't want him at that $10 million price tag. So that's where things get very hairy here for the Jets and Jamison Crowder moving forward.
Yeah, I said this before, or after the draft, after they drafted Elijah Moore, that I'd love to see them extend him an extra year and kind of bring down that cap charge, and maybe it's 2 for 14 or 2 for 13, and most of it's guaranteed, and kind of build yourself extra depth. And now you're really 5 deep at the receiver position, which is awesome. I would have liked to either see them do that or trade him. I don't think it's realistic. Jamison Crowder's just going to be like, hey, pay me less money this year. That's not guaranteed. And I'll play on a team that hopefully can win between 6 and 8 games. It's tough. It's a weird situation. I think Elijah Moore is going to eventually his ceiling is much higher than Jamison Crowder, in my opinion. But Crowder's he's been a really solid player. And I think the fan base is so, like, all they think about when they see Jamison Crowder is Adam Gase. And it's probably not fair to Crowder. But yeah, I'd like to see them restructure him and hopefully add an additional year and see if that might be able to bring that number down. I guess similar with Fan, maybe, where you can bring both those guys to a much more reasonable number and giving them a little more guaranteed money going forward. They were able to get Alex Lewis to do it. A little different situation. Jamison Crowder's slightly better at football than Alex Lewis, but I think Crowder would be nice to have on this team. But I also think if they could trade him for a mid-round pick, I wouldn't be crying about it.
No, and really, I think the only way I guess Crowder takes is if you drop that number, increase the guarantees, because right now he's got 0 guarantees. So again, if you give him a little bit of meat on the bone the other way to come back down totally on the contract, I guess that's maybe there. But that's the final point, is the depth. In a perfect world, you'd like to keep Jamison, because if you're a Jets fan, players get injured, probably more so here than anywhere else on planet Earth. So having a Crowder and a Cole and a this and a that, not necessarily the worst thing in the world for the Jets, especially as you're trying to develop a rookie quarterback.
Maybe even they do something where they extend Crowder and give him 2 for 18, but it's all incentive based, where he reaches 70 receptions or he reaches 900 yards or the Jets make the playoffs or something around that nature. I think sometimes guys play better on that, especially the team that, let's face it, has been out of the playoffs by October the last couple of years. Maybe potentially you start incentivizing these guys that, if you're able to play well, like, you're going to get paid here, but we're not just going to pay you just to pay you. This isn't the old Jets, and we're not going to pay that Jets tax. That's why I think it's so important to extend Marcus Maye. That's why I think it's important to get this Crowder deal done. There's certain things we haven't really seen Joe Douglas do yet. Most stuff we've seen a couple drafts, couple off seasons. Now we're now getting into how does he extend players? How does he restructure contracts? How does he have full control over this roster? So I think it's exciting. I'd like to see Maye, Crowder, and potentially the Fant Moses thing taken care of before camp happens, because the Jets don't need more distractions than they already make for themselves.
Definitely not, and that's the last thing. Maye extension. I've said this like 1,000 times. So why not one more? Marcus Maye currently is the only player on the Jets roster. They have 90 players on the roster. He's the only one that was drafted by the team and is, quote unquote, received a second contract, which is the franchise tag tender right now, which doesn't even really count. So with that being said, Joe Douglas has, again, I don't know what the Vegas over-under number is, and let me build this thing through the draft, but it's the over for Joe Douglas. He's got to put his money where his mouth is. It's about drafting, developing, and retaining. He has retained nobody yet, but again, it's a very small sample size. So Maye doesn't even only mean it for Maye, a guy who's earned it. It means it for the rest of the team and the rest of the NFL that say, oh, wow, that player played really well, received and was awarded a contract extension. The Jets want to change the narrative, make the best culture in sports, all these Joe Douglas-isms that are out there. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, no, I think May's got to get extended. That, or you're just going to end up franchising him again next year, and then you're going to let him walk after his age 29 season, which from a team perspective is the franchise tag sucks, right? It's horrible for players. But if I'm the Jets, you probably could do that. I'd prefer they give him maybe a 3-year extension and like between like $9 and $12 million a year in some level, in some range there, and again incentivize him. He wants to be here. He's probably the leader of that defense at the moment. And him and CJ Mosley are only a year apart in age, which is kind of weird. But no, I think you need to reward Maye, because if you want to stop paying that Jets tax, does winning help? Obviously. But also, how many more guys the Jets going to draft that are talented, and then they're going to go somewhere else and be successful and get paid? Because that's when people start to go, I'm not going to come play here unless I'm a free agent. They're going to pay me $4 million a year net. It's just I think they need to get Maye done, and I think he wants to be here. I know for a fact he wants to be here. So why not reward him? Right? I'm not saying to overpay and all of a sudden throw some crazy money, but you can't trade Jamal Adams and then not extend Maye. Like then it's tough as a fan base to go, what are we doing? Like, we finally drafted a good guy in the second round, which we never do, and then you can't. I'd be pretty upset with that move if that's the case. I'm not, like, you're not going to get this great value in a trade anyways. So extend him, have their defense built around Mosley, Q, and him, and then Ross and all these guys can develop here. And that's what I'd like to see. I mean, maybe I'm letting my emotions get the best of me when it comes to Maye, but I just think he needs to be here, and I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be.
All right. Well, Pot, you've officially popped the cherry. Welcome to YouTube.com on Boy Green's channel here. It's phenomenal. This won't be the last time, I'm sure, that we're collabing together. So thank you so much for stopping by, man, and make sure you give people all the info where they can hit you up.
Yeah, no, Twitter, WillPaul11, TOJ Pod, wherever you find your podcast. We've had some pretty big guests, humbly, and we're going to have a bunch more, some current and former players that you guys are going to be, maybe some people we've talked about, spoiler alert, in this pod. And then, it's an exciting time to be a Jets fan. There's a lot of good stuff coming from training camps, some articles, some positional battle previews. And, I really appreciate you having me on, and hope that people enjoy it.
All right. Thanks, man.